Alternative fuels, EV charging, it's a case of watch this space. We do give advice at our events to members because they do ask us two questions: how much is my site worth, and should I put a charging point in?
Today I'm joined by Gordon Balmer, the Executive Director of the Petrol Retailers Association, just to help us talk about some of the aspects that we're going to be highlighting in our Business Outlook document.
Thanks very much for inviting me on the call, Steve. Happy to be here.
I think it's probably worth just touching, first of all, on the impact that COVID has had on the sector. The effects of COVID has actually been reasonably positive on the forecourt sector from the point of view that whilst volumes fell away to start with as people were locked down, as that came back, volumes came back, but actually the shops have done really, really well. And on the whole, profitability has been pretty good at most sites. There are some exceptions, obviously, where you've got highly transient locations, but how have the retailers seen it from your perspective, Gordon?
Well, the obvious thing is fuel volumes have reduced. When you actually look at the BEIS numbers, that's Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, they are skewed quite heavily towards company-owned sites and hypermarkets. So when we've spoken to a number of members, when the volume was around 90%, for example, of pre-pandemic volume, some members, particularly more urban ones, are saying, well, actually, we're existing on 80%. So that isn't, entirely accurate. But you're right, Steve. The focus has been very much on non-fuel, and a lot of members have been working very, very hard to improve their shop offer. And in 2020, for example, in September 2020, Shell announced that their basket size had increased by 15% in a year. So that's a good example of where you've actually seen convenience retail come right back into the fore. A lot of our members are doing click and collect, food to go, focusing very much on localization. For example, one of our members, a Ascona Group, have developed an app called Ursa, and that's really to get to know their customers better, to connect with their customers, and to also offer items that are discounted and special offers on a weekly basis. So that's improved as well. We've seen residual shop sales improve across the board between 5 and 10%, and in some cases, things like butchery up 40%, which has been terrific. So that's been very good. So very much fuel volumes lower, but they have managed that through increasing margin. But shop has done very well.
So do you think that fuel retailers have seen new customers come through the door that they may not have seen pre-pandemic?
Definitely. A lot of people that decided to shop locally have come through the door. So the missions have changed, not necessarily just to go to a forecourt to get your fuel anymore. People are seeing it as a destination to go and get their dinner for tonight, for example, or their food for a dinner party at the weekend, or alcohol, which has done very well. So all these things have played into the hands of our retailers that have made good investments over the years into their shop offer.
I mean, obviously, car washing has been a strong part of the forecourt business over the last, forever really, but there was a prevalence of hand car washes. I know that the PRA has been quite vociferous in terms of trying to regulate that part of the sector. What's happened with COVID? Because my impression is that there's been a lot of maybe Europeans that have headed back to Europe. What's gone on in that part of the business?
Of course, during COVID, the government announced a lockdown, and hand car washes were banned from operating. But the Car Wash Association, which is an affiliate of the PRA, was able to convince government that they should let the automated washes remain open. So that's been a good income stream for our members in the PRA and other members of the CWA that operate automated washes. So you're right, Steve. We've seen a lot of people going back to country of origin. So they're suffering, like a lot of people are, with staff shortages. We've seen a dramatic increase in the cost of hand car washing. Before the pandemic, you could see it as low as £5 or even below. Now some are charging between £9 and £10. There's a lot of collusion in town in terms of who's setting the price for this. So there's a lot going on in that world. And we've just recently had a reception at the House of Commons where we invited a lot of the regulators along, Gangmasters and Labour Abuse Authority, for example. And we also partner with the Responsible Car Wash scheme to try and bring some order into that part of the business. Because over the last few years, we've seen the available washes, about 80% of those have gone to hand car washes. So the rug has rather been pulled out of the automated washes, unfortunately, with only 20% of the market. And we hope through our activities we can start to redress that issue.
Just moving on to sort of staffing issues, I suppose. One of the big things we have to look at in valuation terms is what the staffing cost is at a site or a number of sites. We look back at the accounts and, you know, the number for wages has been X. Looking forward, though, we have to predict what the wages are going to be because of the national living wage and so on. I mean, how have retailers been reacting to increasing costs on that front?
Well, it's not it's not only the increase in costs, it's actually getting people to come and work in a forecourt at the height of a pandemic, because you are really literally on the front line. Obviously, members have taken steps to improve the working conditions, such as screening and obviously queuing, orderly queuing, and making their customers wear masks or advising customers to wear masks. But no, I mean, it's been very difficult because obviously you've seen the effects of Brexit across all sectors, so hospitality, hotels, and we're not immune to that. Indeed, one of our members was telling us that they've got a site that's opposite a new Amazon warehouse. Amazon were offering £1,000 signing on fee and £12 an hour to come and work in the warehouse. So it's no surprise they lost a number of their staff to Amazon. So these are the sort of things that are happening, and it is difficult to attract and retain existing staff members.
And how is the industry tackling that, do you think? Is it a case of paying people more? Do you think it's a case of fighting fire with fire almost? Can the retailers afford to do that? Would those costs be passed on to the customers?
Well, as I've said, I mean, when you actually look at the fuel margin, with reduced volume and rising costs, our retailers are having to do just that. So they're having to pay above the minimum wage in most cases. They're having to try and improve the working conditions, maybe offering pensions. Well, they obviously have to offer a workplace pension, but trying to actually offer other associated things, such as maybe discounts on food and things like that, in order to improve the offer. So they are doing a lot to try and retain the members of staff that they've got.
And what about the energy prices? We can't escape that at the moment. I mean, is that affecting retailers in a massive way? Do they use huge amounts of electricity?
Well, you look at all the chiller cabinets and you look at the pumps and you look at car washes, they're all powered by electricity. And we were recently at the Bradford Roadshow and had a presentation from Spiral Utilities, who are an associate member of ours who monitor electricity prices. And one of our members was telling us that his bill for this year has actually tripled in terms of electricity costs. So this gives you an example of the rising costs that we have to contend with at the moment.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because we've had a debate in the industry over the last year or two now about electric vehicle charging and getting power to forecourts and so on. What's your view on that? I mean, I've sort of done an article recently in the Forecourt Trader, which kind of says, look, electric vehicles are coming, but actually most forecourt operators probably aren't going to play a massive part in the electric charging revolution if it comes in the next 20 years or so. What's your view, Gordon?
Well, we were at the APEA a couple of weeks ago, the Association of Petroleum Explosives Administration. That was at Milton Keynes. And one of our members was actually on stage and he said installing electric vehicle charging points on a forecourt is commercial suicide at the moment. So that gives you an example of some of the views that are out there. And he's right to a certain extent. Not every forecourt is suitable to install electric vehicle chargers because of the proximity to the substation. Once you look at the cost of an ultra rapid charger and then the cost of the civil engineering to connect it up, that's not, without actually giving up a car parking space and everything else, it does become a very difficult business case. But one of the other reasons is you don't know what revenue stream you're going to get out of it. And you could be looking at a 10, if not 15-year payback. And what, again, is the future for that forecourt in 10 and 15 years? So it's extremely difficult at the moment for many of our members to justify putting in charging points.
What was going through your mind when you were sort of hearing the reports of the COP26 summit and, climate change initiatives and everything else?
Well, I think, unfortunately, the government didn't handle it very well because we didn't get the real decision makers in the room. So India, China and Brazil decided not to come, and Russia. You also had a bit of a watering down right at the end in terms of the temperature levels that they were going to sign up to. And to a certain extent, you can't blame them because their economies are at a different stage, than Western economies. However, in terms of us, what we're trying to do, I think that there is, our retailers recognising that there is an issue with the climate emergency. That's why we're very supportive of things like E10. So I think that's gone very well. It was introduced in September, and the government is saying, or the Department for Transport is saying, that cut emissions by 750,000 tonnes a year. This is CO2 emissions, which is equivalent to taking 350,000 cars off the road. So that has gone extremely well, and we are always willing to participate in that. Coming back to EV chargers, somebody said to me, when will your members start installing them? And my response was, when they can make money. So we're all in business to make money, and that's what we've got to look at.
And what about hydrogen? I mean, obviously BP just made quite a significant investment up in the north of England, and other big oil companies are going down the renewables and what appear to be green credentials route. Do you see hydrogen playing a part in the, let's say, short to medium term?
Well, the issue there is the government have decided that electricity is really the fuel for cars and light commercial vehicles. Hydrogen appears to play more to HGVs and buses. So there's a lot of work, for example, going in on buses, people like Wright Bus, for example, Joe Bamford, and we've spoken to him. We keep a very close watching brief on this on behalf of members. We're part of a lobbying group in Parliament, getting the latest data that obviously the politicians are discussing. Some of our members are quite willing to install hydrogen on their forecourts as a test case, but obviously the costs are quite expensive. The cost of an electrolyser can be in the millions of pounds. That's to produce the hydrogen on site. You can have it road tankered in. And again, obviously members are used to dispensing things like LPG, so they could take that on their forecourts, but it's having the space and also then having the demand. So we're very willing to actually look at hydrogen as a fuel for the future, particularly when you consider that many of our members supply the diesel bunkering fuel. So if hydrogen is to replace diesel, then there needs to be a sustainable, credible hydrogen refueling network, including all the motorways. And that's where we think we can play a part. But obviously it's got to be, I think, incentivized by the government for us to actually start to do that.
I mean, it's interesting because we get asked by banks quite a lot of the time how we see the market. Obviously, we're doing lots and lots of valuation work, and we're just reporting what's happening. We see no slowdown in demand for forecourts at the minute. Are you experiencing the same kind of sentiment amongst your members?
Absolutely. We were at an event which you were at, the Petrol Plaza event in September. We held a surgery where our members could come and talk to Brian and myself. And all we kept hearing was, do you know anyone who's got sites up for sale because you want to buy them? So very much so is the answer to that question.
And from the bank's perspective, if those large financial organisations that lend into the industry, let's call it, do you think they are going to change their attitude at all to lending into a sector which retails fossil fuel effectively?
Well, it depends on their level of understanding. I mean, McKinsey published a report recently, and they said that by 2030, 80% of vehicles on the road will still require hydrocarbons. And by 2035, 60%. So it all depends on how fast the decarbonisation of transport happens. But while you've still got those time horizons, I think the banks are still willing to lend money. And two reasons: the level of interest in convenience retail and the growth in that sector. And secondly, it's also backed by land values with scarce land, particularly in some parts of the country, and also cash flow as well. So you've got a number of compelling reasons why they still want to actually lend money into the sector.
Yeah, look, I mean, totally reflect those comments in what we see on a day-to-day basis. You know, I think we have about 5 offers for every site that we sell. We're just doing some statistics at the moment, which I'm sure we'll be publishing, which refers to the number of buyers there are for every potentially available forecourt out there, and it's quite eye-watering. Do you see any further sort of consolidation in any way? Just because obviously Asda has been bought by EG Group, and there's some discussion about whether EG and Asda merge. And similarly, CD&R have agreed to purchase Morrison's, although that's on ice at the minute. I mean, there's some massive organisations that control a significant number of forecourts there.
Well, EG have actually pulled out from purchasing the Asda forecourts at the moment. So that is now having to be funded by the new Asda business, as we understand it. You're right, CD&R have put the Morrison's deal on ice, pending the outcome of or how the business is going to be affected by COVID-19 in the coming year. Yes, we do see lots more consolidation. There's still quite a lot of family-owned businesses out there, and it's not necessarily now us trying to second guess with, well, who's coming up for retirement anymore, which is what it used to be, or who hasn't got a son or daughter that wants to go into the business. With the scale of the sort of checks that are being waved in front of people's noses, then I think there will be some more. And I think there's some still attractive sites out there. I mean, when you come to our shows, you show some sites that have been underinvested for many years because of the real estate, because of house building. They've got potential for new offers on the site. So I still think that there will be consolidation, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because years ago, we were worried about supermarkets, weren't we? You know, I remember us doing a lot of work with regard to new planning applications from supermarkets wanting to put a new forecourt in. I think they're few and far between now.
Yeah.
But as the ownership profile of the industry has shifted towards independence, I think there's been less pressure on keeping fuel volumes high and margins low from the oil companies as they used to. And so does it pave the way a little bit for some relief on margins? Do you think that's going to be one of the ways that retailers can defend the rising costs in the industry?
Well, that has got to be the only way they can defend it. But yes, we haven't seen the same level of activity. Obviously, a lot of these businesses are highly leveraged, and they have to try and compete against the Aldis and the Lidls. So they've obviously got a lot of pressure on their grocery side of the business in terms of discounting. So can they afford to obviously discount fuel to the level that they used to? They can still be the cheapest on the street, but they don't necessarily have to crater the prices to the levels that we saw in the last few years. So I think there is a good opportunity for our members to flex the margin to really, as we've said, pay for all these cost increases that are coming along.
What are the kind of main themes, do you think, for the year ahead?
Well, it depends on where we are with the virus and how it's dealt with by Westminster and the devolved governments. So there's obviously an issue in Q1 in terms of how that's going to play out. Margin's still good, but reduced volume, obviously working from home. But we've seen a lot of people switch out of public transport and buy second-hand cars. So the second-hand car market is now gone through the roof, and we never thought we'd see that. But we've obviously got rising costs. We've got the national insurance cost increase to deal with as well. Barclays forecast oil to remain, or Brent crude to remain at around $77 a barrel for next year, which is just a slight increase on where we are at the moment. So, we're still seeing a bit of increase there. But again, it depends on global demand for that. More investment, I think, into unlocking value from real estate for convenience retail from members. So chiller cabinets, apps, automated menus, price discounted offers, products and things like that. We also think we could see a resurgence in vehicle washing. We talked recently to some investors that are coming in from the US who would like to replicate the business model they have over there. Obviously, land is an issue to try and get land. But when we talk to a lot of our members in our car wash association, manufacturers are saying there's a lot more interest now, and working with the responsible car wash scheme to get the industry back on a level playing field. So you don't have non-compliant hand car washes. If they do remain in business, they need to, pay their way and pay people properly and get out of the criminal activities that some of them might have been involved with. So we see quite a lot of opportunities from that perspective. Alternative fuels, EV charging, it's a case of watch this space. We do give advice at our events to members because they do ask us two questions: how much is my site worth, and should I put a charging point in? So we do try and obviously give that advice, and we'll see how how it develops in terms of the economics on that one going forward as well.
So, Gordon, look, that's really, really interesting. I think we're much on the same page on many of those issues. We've certainly got a very busy year looking ahead now. There's plenty of stuff on the desk at the moment. I think retailers are in a good place. I think you're in a good place. So really appreciate you joining me.
Thank you very much, Steve.